The third season of Picard is finally out. Here we see Picard reunite with some old friends for one final adventure. But has the series continued its downward spiral? The first 2 seasons of Picard were hot garbage. The fans have spoken. But did the showrunners listen? Has the show improved? Join us, dear viewer, as we explore the final frontier. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's your access to loads of free, all-new reviews I put out weekly here at Off the Cover. And without further ado, onto the video. The first episode of the final season of Picard, titled The Next Generation, feels like a new beginning. Part of that is because, in the strictest sense, it is. A big chunk of its main cast departed following the Season 2 finale. Most of its larger plots were wrapped up fairly neatly, and even its striking lead now feels like a sunnier version of the man who spent much of the first 2 seasons acting like a pathetic weakling. But has Admiral Picard finally returned to his true self? Although Picard's first 2 seasons were a steaming pile of cow dung, they still occasionally had their moments. The deep, quiet bond that has developed between Picard and Seven over the course of this show's run can be plainly seen in this 3rd season premiere. The first 2 seasons put Admiral Picard in 2nd place before the more, feminist characters, and made him out to be weaker than he was ever portrayed, simply because he was a man. As a series, Picard has never seemed to quite figure out what it wanted to be. Is it a thoughtful rumination on legacy and regret? Is it a second chance found family drama? Is it an exploration of inner trauma, or an exploration of one man's better angels triumphing over the tortured past? The show has been all these things and none at all in its schizophrenic writing and pacing. It's been a mess, indecisive and hard to follow. Audiences had no clue how to feel about it, or if it was part of a larger story to tell. In that regard, the 3rd season's premiere probably doesn't help much, given that it feels like the start of an entirely different show than the one we've spent the past 2 years watching. But is it too little too late? To be fair, the premiere comes the closest to what most fans always wanted from a Picard series in the first place. One final adventure, as an homage to a great character, so that he can ride off into the sunset, the hero that he truly is. The episode feels like a more mature Star Trek The Next Generation movie, where Picard and Riker crack jokes in the same way they used to, this time about how old they are, and by extension, how the audience has grown since the show originally aired. But does it work the same way it used to? As an episode, The Next Generation isn't groundbreaking television, but it's definitely fun, with plenty of callbacks to the series that once bore this installment's name, and our first hints at what's happened to many of the characters we loved since it aired. In the opening sequence, we see Beverly Crusher sending a distress call to Picard from the far reaches of Federation space before being attacked by an unidentified alien race in a tense and compelling battle. Jean-Luc's determination to rescue his former chief medical officer, even though the two haven't spoken in 20 years, carries a real emotional weight. What other emotional heartstrings are tugged in this episode? From Picard's reunion with a slightly glum Riker at 10 forward, to the pair's hilarious attempt to con their way onto a starship to take him to Beverly's last known location, the episode shines with wit and nostalgia. They get a little help from Seven, now serving as the gorgeous new USS Titan's first officer. I mean, seriously, Jeri Ryan is as sexy as the new ship she's on, signifying that this lady still has it going on. The hour-long episode balances new galactic hijinks with loads of entertaining nostalgia. We even meet Geordi LaForge's daughter, now a pilot on the Titan, and Riker humiliates her with embarrassing stories from her time in the Academy in classic Riker fashion that only Jonathan Frakes can deliver in peak space dad form. In what other ways has the show retained its wit and charm? Picard tries to pretend like he's the sort of man who would throw his weight around as an admiral, while still taking the time to comfort Seven, who's struggling with her decision to return to Starfleet. Perhaps this wouldn't work nearly as well as it does without the clear and obvious bond that still exists between Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes. But if your heart didn't give a little flutter the first time Jean-Luc calls Riker number one by accident, well, I really don't know what to tell you. Much of this episode is understandably table setting for the rest of the season. Riker and Picard find Beverly gravely injured in a med pod and accompanied by a stranger who turns out to be the dashing son she's never told anyone about. But who's the father? I'm sure we all immediately did the math and realized that this young man's existence is the most obvious and likely reason why Beverly has avoided all contact with her old Enterprise crewmates. How and why Beverly chose to hide her son from the world are questions later episodes will have to answer, as well as why the Crushers are being hunted by a very heavily armed, unidentified alien race. The fact that whatever's gone down has been enough to make Beverly, of all people, completely distrustful of the Starfleet means it has to be pretty bad, right? The weakest link of the Season 3 premiere has got to be Raffi, which probably won't surprise anyone. The show has never seemed to know quite what to do with her character since the first season. She's shunted off into what feels like a story that's happening in a completely different show here. Now an undercover intelligence officer, she's been living deep in the criminal underworld of space trying to track down a group of dangerous experimental weapons. How any of this ties into the broader story the show is telling is unclear so far, but it's hard not to resent every moment these scenes take away from the larger Crusher Picard Riker story in this episode. Raffi's scenes seem to bring any sense of narrative momentum to a clanging halt anytime she's on screen. Can the show integrate whatever her story arc is into the main story? Nostalgia is a powerful feeling. It is a feeling that the third season of Picard seems to be keenly aware of, and one in which the audience melts emotionally in remembrance of a great show gone by, one that they grew up with. The episode is good enough to make fans of both Picard and the original TNG series happy at the prospect of the season to come. We've all been burned by this show before, but early reviews of the rest of the season are overall quite positive, and I'm looking forward to more of this final adventure. If you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more great content.